On the night of May 1st, 1776, 5 men met in a Bavarian forest to form a secret society. Their leader was a 28-year-old professor of canon law named Adam Weishaupt. He held a deep hostility toward the Catholic Church's control over intellectual and political life in the region, and he wanted a safe space to promote Enlightenment ideals. He called his new group the Perfectibilists. Over the next 9 years, the organization expanded rapidly. From those 5 original members, it grew to as many as 2,000 points of contact spreading across Germany, Austria, France, Italy, and Denmark. They communicated almost entirely in cipher and built a highly elaborate multi-tiered command structure. To fill the ranks of that structure, Weishaupt actively recruited Freemasons, minor nobles, writers, government administrators, and intellectuals who shared his desire to oppose monarchical abuse and religious influence. Then, in 1785, the Bavarian government found out about them and banned the organization. Members fled or expelled or were arrested, and Weishaupt was permanently banished from Bavaria. In under a decade, the society dissolved, having completely failed to achieve any of its stated political goals. Yet today, hundreds of millions of people believe this exact group survived, and they credit them with orchestrating historical events as massive as the Russian Revolution. They are frequently named as the true architects behind the assassination of President Kennedy. The accusations extend well into modern pop culture, with claims that Beyoncé is a high-ranking member. Similar accusations are routinely thrown at her husband Jay-Z. And if you ask for hard proof, believers will almost always point directly here, to the back of the American dollar bill. A club of Bavarian idealists lasted exactly 9 years and left absolutely zero historical footprint after 1785. How did they become the omnipotent architects of modern conspiracy culture? To understand why Weishaupt's group existed, you have to look at Bavaria in the 1770s. The region was heavily Catholic and deeply conservative. Intellectual life was tightly constrained by the aristocracy and the church, leaving very little room to safely discuss Enlightenment concepts or political reforms. The elaborate code names and secret ciphers his members used were not mystical occult rituals. Because state authorities routinely surveilled secret societies, these codes were basic, practical security measures designed to keep their members out of prison. The organization grew quickly, but that growth triggered severe internal conflict. A key recruiter named Baron von Knigge resigned in 1784. He explicitly accused Weishaupt of severe hypocrisy, claiming to build a society for human freedom while maintaining absolute despotic control over his own members. This internal rot made them highly vulnerable. In 1785, police raids uncovered the society's physical evidence, capturing membership lists, correspondence, and those very cipher keys. Weishaupt was forced to flee to Gotha, where he spent his remaining years writing philosophical defenses of his ideas. The real society collapsed under the weight of its own internal friction and state suppression. By the end of the decade, it possessed zero actual power. But that total absence of historical activity left a vacuum perfectly suited for a massive fiction. The fabrication started almost immediately. In 1797, a Jesuit priest named Augustin Barruel published a 4-volume history of the French Revolution. Instead of pointing to economic collapse or social unrest, he attributed the entire revolution to the secret plotting of the Illuminati. Barruel's narrative was false in every substantive respect. But it was incredibly compelling, largely because he successfully tied the defunct Illuminati to a group that was still very active and visible, the Freemasons. The theory sat mostly dormant until the 1960s, when it was picked up by the American counterculture. 2 writers, Robert Anton Wilson and Carrie Thornley, started deliberately feeding fabricated stories about the Illuminati to mainstream publications as a philosophical exercise in creating chaos. Wilson later co-authored the Illuminatus trilogy, a set of satirical novels that intentionally jammed every known conspiracy theory into one absurd, contradictory narrative. Their explicit intent was to mock paranoia by pushing it to an unbelievable extreme. The irony is that the joke failed completely. Readers took the novel seriously. The project meant to cure paranoia acted as the perfect delivery system, permanently cementing the Illuminati into modern global culture. Today, the conspiracy theory grants the Illuminati impossible contradictory powers, operating as a shadow government that controls rival nations, competing banks, and global media all at once. The documented historical reality is a Bavarian club of Enlightenment idealists that lasted 9 years and vanished. Even their most famous supposed calling card, the Eye of Providence on the dollar bill, is a case of mistaken identity. It was originally adopted by the Founding Fathers as a traditional religious symbol, representing the eye of God watching over the newly formed American Republic. The accompanying Latin text and the pyramid itself predate the Illuminati and reflect early American ideals. They are entirely disconnected from a secret society operating in a German forest. Weishaupt himself openly admitted his project was a naive, utopian attempt to educate his members in virtue and rational governance. He controlled no international banking systems. He toppled no governments. The endurance of this story has very little to do with an 18th century law professor. It survives because humans have a deeply ingrained psychological need to find patterns in chaotic events. We would rather believe that a powerful, secret enemy is in control than accept the reality that the world is incredibly complex, random, and often completely unmanageable. Next time, we climb into the Andes to examine Machu Picchu. We'll look at the civilization that built an entire stone complex in an impossible location in the 15th century, only to abandon it less than 100 years later.